And so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong. And then the moral is, so oft in theologic wars, the disputants I ween rail on in utter ignorance of what each other mean, and prate about an elephant not one of them has seen. So whether it's religious or political or social preferences or whatever it is, I think so often when we come to a table to have a discussion with people with differing views, we are so convinced of our position and the interpretation of what the elephant is, where we only, as limited people, we only have a limited view of, or a piece of that elephant, this metaphorical elephant. And we're so convinced because of our experiences that we've come to honestly that nobody else can have a different experience than that. And if they do, then they're wrong. They're dead wrong. And so for me, it's like, okay, my eyes, my physical eyes can see many things, but my intellectual, my spiritual, my eyes of those things are very blind. But I can expand my view and my understanding of what the elephant is if I'm open to hearing from other people's experiences or going to where they're at. Oh, you feel the elephant's knee? Oh, that is part of the elephant. I understand that. Even if they're not open to moving to your position, I think we can learn from each other by having that openness, that curiosity to see where they come from, even if their conclusion's different than our own individual conclusions. I shared this with a family member and said, I want to share this. Like, this is so amazing. We're all blind. And they're like, I don't think people want to hear that they're blind. It's like, it's true. Sure. I mean, we don't want to hear that we're blind, but it's kind of like that chasm between two positions. If we don't acknowledge that it's there, how can we bridge at that? If we don't acknowledge that we have at least some blindness or some perspective limiting things, then how are we going to bridge that blindness? And ultimately, if we can get all 6 of the blind men together, we're going to have a big picture of what the elephant is. And if the elephant is religion, we'll understand religion in a much broader and deeper way than if we just stick to only one position along this elephant of religion. Only one position is true, or only one position is valid. We're missing out on the immensity of the elephant and just the natural beauty, whether it's through interaction with the elephant or even just viewing it like, wow, watch how it moves. Like it's amazing to watch versus we're arguing about all of these different pieces of it, and this little bit, I don't want it to move. I don't want it to change. And yeah, it's just, there's much more to life than just being in one place and staying in that one place forever, feeling safe. So I understand, and I've been there in the place of wanting to feel safe, and I still want to feel safe at times, but I also want to experience and grow and learn and mature.
Can I say something uncomfy?
Of course.
Okay. And I'm going to preface this by saying, back when I was teaching in the church, if there were things that I didn't understand or I couldn't reconcile, for example, we're, in some book of scripture and there's something that doesn't quite make sense. I can't reconcile it. I just wouldn't teach it, right? Like I would just avoid it because I didn't know how to manage it. And I eventually got to a point where I said, I'm not doing that anymore. If this doesn't make sense to me, I'm just going to go up in front of the class and say, I don't understand this. Like, do any of you understand it? Like, can you, like, what do you have to say about this? Like, I'm just going to be honest and open that, like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't seem right. And I'm not going to be afraid of not knowing everything. And this is kind of like a similar thing in a different context, because the thing that I am going to say isn't going to have like a tidy bow to wrap it up with, but I'm looking for like perspective and input. So I think that if like Mormonism is the elephant, and there's like, you know, people along the Mormon spectrum going up to touch the elephant and having these different experiences, like, I would say, like, I spent a lot of my life outside the church. I got baptized when I was 16. I was active in the church for a long time. I was kind of like fringy for a little bit. And, you know, now I'm like pretty much out. So I would say that I have felt, at least if we're going to go real deep into this metaphor, I have felt at least 3 different parts of the elephant, right? And if there is somebody who, let's say I've touched like the foot and the tusk and the ear, and if someone who has only touched the tusk, so someone who has been in the church their whole life, comes to me and says like, hey, no, this for sure is a spear. Like, I felt it. It's for sure a spear. And I'm like, you know, like I felt what you're feeling. I know what you're talking about, but I also like felt this part and this part over here. And like, I'm pretty sure it's an animal, right? From like all these different things I felt. And they're like, no, listen to my experience. It's a spear. And I'm like, I know, I felt what you're feeling. And so I think that when we talk about coming together, realizing our perspectives are different, I think often people who have left the church, or who are, again, quotes, on that side, would say like, no, I don't actually think that like this is just a matter of bringing two perspectives, like 2 different perspectives together, because I myself have had the experience that you're having, and I've also had this other experience. You know, I think it's like people are arguing about Cafe Rio and Costa Vida, which one is better, and one person is insistent that Cafe Rio is better, but they've only been to Cafe Rio, and the other person has been to both, and they're like, oh man, these tortillas, they are so good. That sweet pork is so good. And the other person who's been to both is like, I know it is good. You are right. I have had it. And I've also had this. And I think ultimately the raspberry chipotle chicken wins, right? And like Costa Vida is better. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I think that like when you are, I think that for a lot of people who are out, just like the idea of like, oh, just come listen to each other feels hollow, because they've spent so much of their life listening about the spear. Yeah. Tell me. Let me have it.
I want to say something quick, and then I wonder if our metaphor isn't, like all metaphors, not perfect.
Isn't.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm thinking that is I do agree that, you know, being on quote unquote both sides, I maybe have a little bit more of experience than someone who has only been a member their whole life, or has only been, who has never been. Yeah, has only touched the
whatever elephant
part of the elephant part.
Yeah.
But if we're talking like the elephant is religion or whatever, like there can be other people out there who I'm imagining someone who grew up atheist, became a Buddhist, and then became a Christian or something like that. They've seen several different like facets of religion, this elephant, whatever. And I guess maybe like, I'm trying to think of a better metaphor, but the point I'm trying to get to is like, what if ideally, and I think this could be true, that somebody has seen every part of the elephant, but they have different conclusions to what it is, even though they've all felt the same things, right? And this happens in, science all the time. There's a quote at the Natural History Museum at University of Utah that my wife really likes, and it's, I think, talking about dinosaurs or something like that. But it basically says something along the lines of like, archaeologists can look at the same data, the same information, and come to wildly different conclusions about it. So maybe that's kind of like what I would push back with this metaphor is it's so important to have other perspectives, and I think we all recognize that, and even those who maybe have only felt one part of the elephant, like, can also recognize that potentially. I would hope so, at least. But if we're talking about like what is the capital T truth of the universe when it comes to things like God, things like creation, things like purpose in life, stuff like that, like I just don't think that there actually is a way that we will be able to know that personally. And so everybody can have their ideas and so forth, and I think it's helpful to get those differing views on the thing, but at the end of the day, it's this amorphous thing that maybe we can kind of like piece out and parse out little bits and maybe see the same thing in a little bit of a different perspective. But end of the day, we just all have to recognize that no one, if we're being honest, no one actually knows for sure what the answer is. So anyway, I don't know if that threw off your thought completely, but that was what I was kind of thinking. So
I agree with that almost entirely. I think maybe with this metaphor that we're talking about, what we can learn from it is not to apply it directly into religion or a specific religion, but into how do we approach conversations, which is the heart of what we're doing here, right? Do I approach it with, I'm fixed in my mind with a determined resolution, and if I come down from the mountain, then I'm disloyal or I'm a traitor or whatever, from whatever position that it is? Or do I approach it as, okay, your experience is a valid experience. Would you consider that my experience might also be a valid experience? No? Okay, well, I might need to go talk with someone else.
Yeah?
Sure. Okay, then, wow, what can we talk about? Like, this is really an impactful conversation now because we're seeing each other as individuals. If I could bring in another metaphorical thing from Plato, the cave. Many people have heard of Plato's cave. Have you heard of Plato's cave? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was introduced to the idea in a philosophy class in high school, and this has just stuck in my head so much. And looking back, it's like, man, I've been in the cave, even having knowledge of Plato's cave. I've been in the metaphorical cave over and over again. And at times, I come out of the cave, and it's like, man, this is amazing. I'm seeing the sunlight. I'm seeing the beautiful things of nature. But again, I'm subject to the elements and whatnot. It might not be as safe. And I feel like liberated because I'm not bound and chained inside the cave anymore. But then I go find another cave, and get stuck there for a little while and try to have conversations with people who are also stuck there. And it's just there are more than one cave in our lives. And it's hard to move outside of the cave and then go back into a cave to try to have a conversation with someone who's squarely in the cave. And that's kind of where I'm having a really hard time at this point in my life, is how do I engage with someone who to me seems so close-minded, and I need to be careful that I'm not being close-minded also. And how do we move forward if it's a person that I see, if it's a family member that I see on a regular basis, because we have events that are constantly ongoing. Mm-hmm. How do I engage there? Do we need some space? Do we just kind of pretend? I have a really hard time pretending. And that's been a really difficult thing for me. It's like, man, why can't I just pretend? It's like I beat myself up that I can't pretend. And it's like, but I want to respect the person where they're at, but I want to be respected too. And
we want to feel like our relationships are rooted in truth, and that we're building relationships with people as we truly are. And so it's like, even if you can pretend to get along, then like you're in a relationship where you're not even yourself, right? It's like almost like a fake relationship because you're acting as a fake person. Yeah, it's really hard. I think I just with people in my life, I don't have a ton of like that dynamic with religion, but I'm like really coming against it with like social and like cultural issues. And yeah, you want to feel like you want to just be honest. You want other people to feel like they're honest. But then it feels like if everyone is being honest, then all we're going to be doing is clashing. And then like, what kind of a relationship is that anyway? And I don't know. Yeah, I don't have an answer for it.
Yeah, neither do I.
We've come up with a good
anyone
question.
does, can you leave a comment on the
Please, send
freaking
us an
video
email. Yeah.
saying what we're all supposed to do about this?
Right.
That's why we're all here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I guess it can be very frustrating for me talking to someone who, I had this experience just this last week with someone I don't even know. They're in like a anonymous account of something, and I don't even know how this happened necessarily, but kind of got into it in the DMs with them in a little bit. And it was just like, so in my mind, it was so blatantly obvious about this evidence kind of thing. Like, how could you see it any other way? Like, this is clear as day, basically. And they were just kind of like mocking me, I guess. And like, it just felt very childish interacting with them. And I'm like trying to like, tell me how you see it differently, like trying to be the bigger person. And they just kind of went back to that. I'm just like, okay, well, now I just have to block you because you're being obnoxious and this isn't going anywhere, right? And sometimes that can feel that way, like in person, or maybe it just, I just have in my mind this expectation that if I do talk to this person in my life about this, I know their stance, and I feel like they're not willing to budge on that at all. Is it worth my time to try to talk to them? Can I call that out in them, perhaps? Like, I don't know. Maybe that feels good and bad at the same time. Like, but I don't know. Go ahead.
Were you done with your
Yeah, I
okay.
don't know where I'm going exactly.
So like as far as like, this is just like a curiosity question.
Sure.
Like as far as like someone changing their mind, I'm not saying this to challenge you. I'm saying this because I think it's going to get us to the heart of something. Like, why not just like shrug your shoulders and move on? Like, why do you care what they believe about it, right? Because like if they have a different belief than you do, like you can both live your lives like that. In like the material world, that difference of belief doesn't have to have like not necessarily have like an enormous impact on things. And so like, yeah, so I guess what I'm asking you, why do you care? But I'm not asking you, why do you care to challenge it?
Sure.
Yeah.
I
think you probably care for a good reason.
I guess the reason, it depends on who I'm talking to. Like that anonymous person on the Instagram account, like, okay, I'm going to block them. I'm never going to talk to them again. Like, I don't care about that. But if someone's really close to me and I do see them on a regular basis, and in a way our beliefs about how the universe works is affecting not only my relationship to this person, but also that of like my family member, our other family members, our common family members, then it can be a little bit like, where do we fit, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess that's where it can kind of be tough, because I'm not just going to like, I'm not one to just completely like ghost a family member of mine just because.
Yeah, you shouldn't usually ghost family members in general.
Yeah, generally.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Sometimes it's necessary. But
Sure.
Yeah, we try not to.
Yeah. So I guess does that answer?
Yeah, I think
where
so.
it's
Do you feel like, and like obviously like be as vague as you feel like you need to about
Sure.
this. And do you feel like because of like a difference in religiosity that people assume things about you that like are not true, and that maybe that's gonna like come into like their assumptions of like how you're living your life or like the decisions that you make? And like, do you feel like you kind of like sometimes you want people to you want people's beliefs to be more in alignment with yours, because then they're gonna have like a better understanding of who you are as a person?
Yes, I think I know what you're saying. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess for me, without getting into specifics necessarily, but like there's certain things that since I stepped away from the church, aspects of my life that have changed, right? Behaviors and so forth. And I think some people maybe look at that, or even just the fact of stepping away, and I've heard through the grapevine of like people kind of thinking that like I did some heinous thing that like nowhere near, like that was the reason why I left the church basically, or why I lost belief and so forth. And like, I guess it just kind of hurts. It's like, oh, like, do you actually think that of me? Like, that sucks. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't, anyway. But like, I want to set the record straight, but then it's also like awkward for one thing, super awkward to like bring that up. Like, oh, I heard through so-and-so that you said
that
this.
you think I had an affair.
Yes, exactly. Or something like that. So, but then also like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's tough.
Yeah.
I want to jump in and respond
Sure.
a little bit as well. So for me, I think Jules, that question of why do you care manifests a level of health and function that I'm still definitely working on. Because for me, it's like, I do care what people think. And I don't know if this is across the board or if it's just my personal experience, but it's like, I'm less concerned about if people agree with me than I am about if people understand me. That my position is, call it justifiable. Maybe there's a better word than justifiable, but my position is understandable. And again, even if people disagree with me, they can see that I got to my position honestly as well. And I feel like that's something that I try to give people the benefit of the doubt on, that I don't know if it's out of fairness or just something that I highly value as having mutual relationships. It's like, if I'm giving this, please give me this in return. If it's something that's hard for me to give you the benefit of the doubt, can I have a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there? And again, just so you understand where I'm coming from, even though you might, not just might, but you have made different choices than what I am making or have made here. So that's how I would respond.
I would agree with that.
You know, one time I saw a psychic in Tucson, Arizona.
Fun.
A long time ago. And in the psychic reading, this was like over a decade ago, a long time ago. And I remember her looking at me and saying, you do not need to be loved. Like, she was saying like, I don't feel like this intrinsic, like, need to be loved, which like I would probably disagree with. But she said, you do not have a need to be loved. You have a need to be admired and understood. Yeah.
Was that like a personal thing? Like she was saying that, like,
she was saying me personally, Juliet
okay.
Miller, like a psychic reading of me.
Okay.
So yeah, that like, which, take that or leave it. But it's something that like I've always remembered, obviously, because it resonated.
Yeah.
As something that was true. Yeah, it's so hard. And I think this comes with like the lack of nuance. To feel like you're easily dismissed. Yeah, for your thoughts, that people hear like, oh, you left, it must be because of you did this horrible thing, or because you were faithless, which like honestly, most of the people that I know, well, I won't say most. I would say that people kind of fall into two camps of like leaving the church. Either they left like sort of pre-mission age, like when they were like pretty young and just like never went like deep into it. Like people who like hadn't gone through the temple yet. Like that's like one category. Their feelings about things usually seem to be not quite as big as the second category. The second category are people who were in and were deep and like ended up leaving after going even deeper, and got like even more faithful, and were like, who like came across things that felt uncomfy and didn't just look the other way, but they were like, I have faith in this institution, I have faith in this system, and I am going to show my faith by going and trying to get that answer. Like I'm going to go looking for it. I'm going to uncover what I can, because I have a deep belief that this can be reconciled, that it's all there, and that that if I knock, it'll be opened unto me. You know, like that's like the other group of people that I've seen leave. And yeah, and it is hard for people to assume that you left because you didn't have faith, when often people kind of leave at the height of their faith, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, kind of going back to what you guys both said, it's like I don't want to be agreed with when it comes to like what I believe about creation or God or the universe or whatever that is. Like, I would rather people like disagree and kind of like push back on, you know, like, no, that's interesting, but like I would rather be understood. I would rather be, I guess, believed when I say the reasons why I did lose my faith, because I have had it said to me that like I don't think that's true, basically. Like I think there's something deeper, and it's like if there is, I don't see it within myself. I feel like I've done a lot of soul searching through this process and so forth, but like honestly, this is like how I got to where I am. Like, yeah, just I would rather be understood and believed rather than agreed with, I guess. Except for that case with that guy on Instagram. That was something not
whatever.
religiously based, and I was just,
He's a
you
loser.
just open your
He's
eyes.
A loser. Whoever that anonymous random. There's a loser running around out there. Be careful, everybody.
Well,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. No, you got.
I was going to go back to that because you'd mentioned like, what do you do in a situation like that? I think it might depend. And if you're in a situation like that with a family member, it's a different story. And which family member, it's a different story. And at what phase of their path in life, it's a different story as well. Like, people change, we change. And something I wanted to share, I know we've talked about this outside of this episode, but on at Last She Said It podcast, they had a guest on named Christina Pagano, and she was talking about motherhood. And this, to me, this pattern applies across the board with any relationship that we have or any identity that we have. But they're talking about motherhood, and she says, motherhood, it's not an identity, it's a relationship. And I have just loved that so much. And as I'm not a mother, but it's resonated so much with me in the sense of, I don't do certain things because I'm a son of God. I do certain things because I have a relationship with God. I don't do things because I'm a husband. I do certain things because I have a relationship with my wife.
Yeah, you have this person that you care about, that you're working together with, that you want the best for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just changes the whole way that I approach things. It's not a matter of obligation and am I meeting my roles and requirements of me as a man, as a son, as a husband, but me, Ashton, am I giving into this relationship, not giving into it, but like giving myself into it in a way that is honorable and intentional and positive? Or am I just meeting the requirements so that I can check that off and, my requirement level has been met and now I can do whatever I want? It's like, it's a different attitude than, so this person maybe you have a disagreement with, okay, well, do they value not arguing? Do they value being right? Do they value being validated or agreed with? Or just, do they value being understood? And then you start to, because you know the person, or you can get to know the person better, you can respond to the individual and not to just the identity, like, well, they're my brother, therefore I'm obligated to talk to them about whatever. It's, no, they're my brother, therefore I know them pretty well, and I care about them because we've shared a lot of history together. I want to engage in a different way than just the obligatory.
That makes sense. Maybe I should just share this episode with that person and it can be like, open a door like, hey, can we talk about some stuff?
Hey, you're in this episode. Guess which one you are?
No, it's just, I don't know. It's so, yeah, like what you said, like there's varying levels of relationship, right? Is this like a cousin? Is this like a second cousin?
Yeah.
You know, like
You're not talking about me, are
no,
you?
I'm not. I'm not
kidding.
talking about you, Ashton. Don't worry. And versus like a parent, a sibling, like a child, like these, it's just so much more and so much more core identity, right? And like, how does this affect not just me, not just them, but like our relationship in general, kind of thing? It can be kind of scary. So maybe that's why I've avoided certain things, but also, anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. I think just talking about, you bring up identity. That's kind of, you bring up identity. Sorry, make sure everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Such a core part of this. And I think, you know, I used to say that Mormonism teaches us to be possessive of the spiritual journeys of other people. And I think maybe, I haven't thought about this too much, but maybe we can expand that just to say that like, there's a lot of things that teach us to be possessive of other people's experiences. But for sure, Mormonism does, right? Because like from the time you come out, like you're encouraged to be a missionary. You're taught that your whole family needs to be good so that everybody can go to heaven, can go to the temple and get all the ordinances and go to heaven and be together forever. And that your eternal life is completely intertwined with the everyday actions of the people around you. And how can you not be possessive of that? How can you not really care? And I think one thing that I feel like I often see like a lack of understanding in the ex-Mormon community regarding the actions of people who are still in the church, and like basically that like people in the church maybe are like really persistent, that they really want people to come back to church, that they don't like that they've left or whatever. But like, if you really believe that living by the tenets of the church is how you get to heaven, and that like, and they love you and they're your family and they want to be in heaven with you and they want to be with you forever, then like, of course they're going to be insistent. Of course they're going to be persistent, right? Like if I thought that, like if I had that belief system right now and I had taught that to my children, and my children if it seemed like they had decided that they didn't want that for themselves, like it was available to us and they opted out of being with me forever, like that would be devastating. That would be completely devastating. And so I think it's really normal for people to not want you to go. You know, I think like we can expect that of people. And to be frank, I actually forget the point that I was going to make when I started this. Possessiveness. That's right. Yeah, I think it's completely normal in general to be possessive of other people's experiences because of what it feels like they can imply about us and our identity, but particularly because of because we're taught that salvation and exaltation is a family event, right? And that we're building up Zion, we're building up a community, that it makes perfect sense for people to care so much and to be so invested. You know, I think that the idea of like, oh, you do what you want and I'll do what I want and we'll all just get along and it'll all be fine, like it just isn't relevant here. You know, like it's just not helpful. It doesn't move us forward, right? Like when this is like the theology that we're involving.
I wonder if that idea of like wanting to build heaven on earth is something that stuck with me even after leaving. Like there's just something that's like, that'd be so cool if we could do that like right now, you know? And I don't know, maybe that's another reason why I started this, is just kind of like that hope or idea or whatever you want to call it, that like I can try to do that as best as I can, and people will come along or they won't, but
they might die in the flood.
Yeah,
that'll be their fault.
Maybe. Or
no, we want them on the boat.
That resonates a lot with me in terms of creating heaven on earth versus waiting until we die for heaven to come, right? Because for me, throughout my life, again, speaking from my personal experience, and I've observed it in other people, of course, but I neglected so many things in the build a heaven on earth now in favor of I'm building my heaven later. It's like, I don't know what my heaven later is going to look like. And I don't even know what the afterlife's going to bring. And I don't know if anyone really does. We have a lot of belief in things and a theology about the afterlife. But ultimately, we don't know. And I don't know. I'll speak from my perspective. I don't know what that's going to look like. And I feel like I've just wasted so much time and energy fixating on this maybe and neglected what I have now and what I know and how to impact other people now instead of building my mansions above, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, one other thought I wanted to add to this.
That's why you're here.
I feel like, again, from my experience throughout my life, I've been so focused on how things appear to other people. Something you had said earlier, Jules, brought this back to my mind. But I think that's a common thing, to be worried so much about how we might appear to other people. And what grows out of that is that we almost police each other in whether we're doing the things that will lead to exaltation or salvation. And my brother-in-law, one of my brother-in-laws, years ago had said, we were having a family discussion about the appearance of evil. And I was in charge of the discussion. I'd volunteered for it. I'd picked the topic. And it went well. But he said something, I don't remember all the details even of what I prepared, but he said something that's just stuck with me since then. He says, yeah, we talk about avoiding the appearance of evil, but do we ever talk about avoiding the appearance of good? And I think so often, because we're worried about what other people may think of, again, I need to speak from my perspective. I worry so much about how other people might view me that I act in ways that are not authentic and aren't even what I'm actually doing, but I want to appear that I'm doing a certain thing. Mm-hmm. Therefore, appearing to be good while not necessarily being genuinely good.
Like feigning righteousness or something?
Yeah, feigning righteousness. That pretense, because I'm worried about other people's view of me. So if instead I focus on actually doing good, it might appear evil to some. It might appear good to others. But for me, it will be with the deliberate intention to do what I believe is good. And I think there's power there that comes from taking personal responsibility and personal investment into something instead of basing it off of what will people think or an external motivator for my actions.
Yeah. Yeah. I spent this summer, I was in a yoga teacher training class, and the first principle of yoga is something called ahimsa, which is nonviolence or non-harming. And I decided for a month or two to really devote myself to this principle of being non-harming. And it was kind of a painful experience because I realized all the ways that I harm people, right? Or all of the ways I could potentially harm people, when I was really focused on trying to really, really minimize just having this this do no harm attitude. And it was pretty uncomfy for me, because when I was really engaged in that, I realized there was a big difference between that way of approaching morality, of just trying not to do harm. Like, it wasn't even like trying to make things better for people. It was just like trying not to make things worse for anybody. Like, that sort of moral compass, we'll say, was so different than like the moral compass, like the check boxes that I used to use to know if I was good, which was like, wear shirts with sleeves and don't drink beer, and like don't swear in mixed company, and like go to church and like do your calling, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, like this whole time I've been calling myself good and like believing myself to be good, because I like was able to say yes to like 7 or 8 temple interview questions, right? And I like saw that little piece of paper as like, whenever people ask me like, what are you most proud of? I would usually say, if it was like the context was appropriate enough, like, I am really proud of my temple recommend. Like, I am really proud that I am ding, 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 a good person. And then, yeah, so it was painful when I shifted to this, just trying not to hurt people. And I realized like how different it was, and how, yeah, just like this different, I guess the other thing of like the temple recommends, like that being your markers, there's just so much to do with like how you're appearing to other people, and like how you're like fitting into your community. Yeah. And I think also one thing that I stopped doing is one day I said, you know what, I'm never going to another bishop's interview. I'm never having another interview with a stake president for anything. I'm never going to sit across from somebody at a table and make my worthiness a subject of conversation. If other people want to talk about whether or not I'm worthy, like, cool, like they can knock themselves out, but I'm no longer going to validate those conversations by being in attendance for it. I decided that I just believed myself to be a good person, and I was going to stop kind of like constantly self-policing, which kind of sounds bad, right? Because I'm not saying that I just like stopped worrying about being a good things, but I started thinking about things. I decided to just make it my goal to relieve suffering in the world, and to make it about, I think, what you were saying of like, just doing good, just making things better, easier, less painful for other people. And like having that be your goal. And as far as what people are perceiving of you, like, do what is right, let the consequence follow. I make an end of my speaking.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I've got no comment for that. So
Yeah.
should we
I
go
got
back
quotes.
to some other quotes from our Instagram followers?
I got quotes.
We got a long conversation out of those too. So
Yeah. Look at us go.
we'll probably make
Okay.
this into a 2-part episode, I think.
Yeah, this is probably the second part that we're in right now.
We are in the second part
Yeah.
now, I would imagine. Yeah.
We're in second part land.
I'll find a natural break and try to,
Okay. I'm going to read, let's see, I think I'll read this one from someone. They said,
remember the context of these quotes is why is it so difficult?
Yeah, as of like, why is bridge building hard? Like, why do we need this podcast in the first place? They said, in terms of building bridges with those who have left the faith, when people leave the church, their quote unquote missionary mindset doesn't leave. Just now what they preach is things they disagree with the church. LDS members can get really defensive, and ex-members have a lot of anger/hurt that they are going through. That combination can be a whirlwind. I say that from my experience now currently living in a mixed faith marriage. One thing that I really appreciate about this contribution is at the end they say they're in a mixed faith marriage, but can you tell which member they are? Like if they're the believing or the non-believing
I had
one
to look,
from the quote?
I had to look back to their response to the previous question of like, where do you fall, to see where they were? Because I was like, this is, like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
should we take a vote?
Do
What do you
you
think?
like, what would you think?
know.
I know. Did you like have an inkling? Like
I
before
thought
you
they
looked?
were an ex-member.
I did too. That was, it was kind of hard because it was like a little bit vague.
Right.
But my assumption, because I guess this is maybe like my bias, and
Same.
since I felt like it had clarity and understanding, I assume like obviously this person doesn't go to church anymore. But no, they are the active faithful member of the couple.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I like shout out to them, you know, because I feel like what they said was really fair. You know, I felt like they weren't like framing one party as being anything bad, really.
No.
Yeah, like just like that it was all like an understandable situation for people.
Right. Like the whole missionary mindset that was something that went through my mind. I really resonated as I was leaving the church. I resonated with Alma the Younger a lot. There's like this scripture where he just kind of talks like, oh, if I could shout from the rooftops or something like that. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but I was just like, could everybody just not know like what I know about, you know, church history or whatever? And like now looking back, I'm like, that was pretty in that same mindset on my mission. I was just like, if everybody in this country just knew what I knew about the truth of the universe as this 22-year-old from Riverton, Utah, right, knows. And it was just kind of like checking myself and like, no, there's way more to it than just that, right? But that missionary mindset does stick with us, whether we're in the church, out of the church, you know, faithful podcasts, critical podcasts. Like it just seems like if everybody just knew all this information,
It'd be so simple.
it'd be so simple.
We
If
just
you knew
gotta
the
tell them.
apologetics for the criticisms, you'll stay in the church. If you knew the criticisms to the apologetics to the anyway, yeah, people would end up where I am, and it would just be way more simple in that sense. And yeah, just people getting defensive. There's a lot of anger and hurt, kind of like what we talked about. This is just such a core part of our identities, right?
I think as far as like people just knowing things and like that would make it so simple, which absolutely, like I absolutely resonate with that, like on both sides, you know. And I'm going to say something, one of those
Uncomfy things.
spicy
Right.
hot takes that nobody asked for. People join the church, stay in the church, leave the church, I think based on whether or not it is working for them at whatever point in their life, regardless of the facts. Usually, you know, I don't think that people join the church because of the historicity, you know, because they have like combed through everything. And that is, you know, either they're like born into it but then also converts, you know, the reason that people become Mormon isn't because of like history or those data points. Mm-hmm. And I think in large part, the reason why people stay or leave Mormonism is also not because of those things.
I 100% agree. And I think even in the church, I'm remembering back to somebody sharing a story of like, whether the story is true or not, I don't know, but some Bible scholar or something like read the Book of Mormon kind of with like this critical eye, and they're like, actually, like, how could Joseph Smith come up with this? And they kind of like joined the church more on this like data proven whatever thing that you kind of spoke of, right? And then eventually something came up later down the line and they lost their faith, and when this was shared in a testimony, it's just kind of like people acknowledged even then, like, we need to find out for ourselves like the truth of this through the Holy Ghost. Mm-hmm. I think was like the case of it. And thinking of my own experience, if I didn't experience what I did, like this profound spiritual feeling that I had telling me that the church is not true, I would still be a member today. Like, there's something about like, yeah, going back either way, whether you're trying to get someone to join, stay, or leave, the facts don't always like help all that much. They're a very small part, at least.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think often people kind of like acquire little bits of facts along the way. And then there's often like, kind of like you were describing, I think like a catalyst that causes people to decide that those facts, or we'll say those data points, because people might like take issue with
Sure.
like, is it a fact or is it not?
That's a good point. Good way to put it.
Like a catalyst that causes people to decide if those data points matter. And I think that it goes the opposite way too. You know, there's things that happen that make people decide that that data points that mattered at one point maybe don't matter anymore.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Ashton?
Yeah, I don't think it's intellectual alone, and I don't know if it is. I think for some it can be a spiritual witness alone, right? That they can hang their hat on regardless of information or regardless of treatment. For me, I think I'm the type of person that it would be how I'm treated that would be catalyzing.
Yeah.
If that's how I would grammatically put things correctly, right?
Yeah.
Because again, there's so much information, or the data points, so many different ways to interpret the same, whether it's archaeological evidence or historical fact or data. But for me, I don't know if this resonates with many or if theirs is more the spiritual. Mine is just the treatment and the going back to relationship, you know. And my belief is with God, again, this is my personal belief. I don't know this, and I don't, this is just how I think and whatnot. If people leave and they had the reasons to do so, I think God is the type of being that would be understanding and validating of the experience, and less concerned about the belief and more concerned about, so what did you do? How did you treat other people then? Did you hold these beliefs that are the true beliefs that you happen to get right, by your belief? But how did that affect how you treated other people? Did you believe all of these right things and you treated people poorly? Or did you get some of these things wrong, but you treated people well? And from my perspective, the New Testament, Jesus' example, it was less about who had the correct beliefs and more about how you treated your neighbor and yourself. Did you care for the poor and needy? Did you clothe the naked? Did you feed the sick? Because in the New Testament, they're the people that will, trying to think, it's Matthew. It's in the book of Matthew, and he talks about, it's the, when did we see you naked and hungry and imprisoned? And I think the heart of the gospel, or the heart of the example of Jesus, was doing it unto the least of our fellows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm going to move to something else unless we have responses here.
I have one quick sentence, but
Sure.
So, just like that, to me, is what Christianity is all about. And
Me too.
in that sense, I would consider myself a Christian,
Yeah.
Whether other people accept that label or not for me is another story, but people get hung up on labels all the time, so I try not to think about it too much. So, but
Yeah. I think that I think a lot of people, both in and out of the church, that disagree with you, that agree with you. I think I'm just going to acknowledge a pain point for people, is that I think that there are a lot of people who have left the church who would have stayed if the requirement was just to be good to your fellow neighbor, or if that was the expectation. I think, that's all.
You're saying not the hyper focus on the standards and whether you meet those
Yeah.
therefore you're
Yeah.
worthy.
Yeah. It's the like a person can be like what honestly I think everyone in the church very readily openly admits that there are good people who don't have temple recommends, that there are people doing enormous good in the world who are not members of the church. I think that
there's that phrase that's like they're great people even though they're not members, right?
right, yeah, not a member,
They're not a member,
a
they're
great
so
guy.
good.
Yeah, like he's still a good person. Like you can be good, but just that focus on the standards can feel really inorganic to people, and it can feel so uncomfy that like to be called good, to have that piece of paper to wave around, that little temple recommend, you have to give 10% of what you make and be in vulnerable situations alone in rooms with men that you don't know who have authority over you, and have your wardrobe scrutinized, and like that, because there are no, like in the Temple Recommend interview, like we're not asked like, did you volunteer this month? You know, like tell me about the compassion that you show to people. Like we aren't really questioned on our emulation of Christ, it seems like, in those meetings.
There's the question if you've been honest with your fellow men, which I appreciate. I think
there's that
one.
Yeah, there's
to be
that.
fair.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we'll be fair.
And
I think that's a good and important question with like everything that encompasses.
Right.
It's all of the rest of them that feel like a struggle.
For me, stepping out, we were kind of in this spot of we wanted to attend a sealing of a family member, but also like my temple recommend wasn't expiring within about a year, 9 months or whatever it would. But anyway, I still like was asked to do the temple recommend questions again, and like the first 3 are kind of like, do you believe in God, the Eternal Father, Son, Jesus Christ, Holy Ghost, that the restoration was done through Joseph Smith, and like the current prophets, seers, and revelators today are like, and I was just like, no, or I don't know to like those questions, and that just kind of felt like, oh, like sucks that disqualifies me, I guess, even though I would like to
go to the ceiling.
Yeah, or even the temple. I loved the temple.
I did too. I got no problems.
Yeah,
I have very few problems with it, but I feel like it's cozy.
Yeah,
I don't.
It's very peaceful.
Yeah. Can I ask, were you like called in for a special like temple recommend interview?
Kind of. Like I gave that talk in church, and I went to this is the timeline, right? So I gave the talk in church, then we go to Sunday school, which at that time I think that day was like priesthood and relief society separately. And you guys know who Dan Witherspoon is? He's a podcaster for a podcast called Latter Day Faith.
No.
Heard the name, I'm not
Maybe.
familiar.
Okay. He used to be part of the Mormon Stories team like a decade ago or something like that. Anyway, he was in my ward at that time, and he gave this wonderful lesson in priesthood, and he's a very, like, I guess, later Fowler stage of faith kind of member of the church, very nuanced in a lot of ways, but still attends like every week and so forth, and loved his lesson. And I like walked away from that lesson feeling like I can make this work, like, thank you, Dan, kind of thing. And then right after that, the bishop was like, can you come talk to me? And that's when we went to the temple recommend interview and kind of stuff. And to be fair, I guess he did say, even though I answered no to those first questions, like with his, I guess, authority or whatever you want to call it, said like, as long as you do not drink coffee and keep wearing your garments, you can still go to this ceiling. I would feel comfortable with that. And I walked away from that feeling good. And then 6 days later, I got a text from him saying, like, actually, I changed my mind, so I'm going to take it away.
Oh.
And that felt a little...
Mitch, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was... Anyway. A lot of big feelings in that moment.
Yeah, you know what? That's like that feels a little witch trial to me.
A little bit.
This, like, picking out... Yeah, the picking out. And because I'm not sure if the handbook has guidance on like on priesthood leaders initiating temple recommend interviews for people who have current temple recommends.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like them doing it at
in the
will.
middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you happen to know the answer to that?
I don't know that.
If anyone knows, type comment. But it feels a little like
Yeah.
uncomfy to me.
Yeah. So I guess in my experience, tying this all together, I guess in some big way, like in my experience, I guess I had this shift of faith through this spiritual experience that I had. Tried to hold on to that still. Learned more information about the church and its history and so forth and whatever. And there was a breaking point for me at some point. But even then I'm like, okay, I still want to try to make this work. And then this whole experience happened with my local leadership and that, I guess. So in a sense, maybe I was offended into leaving. I don't know. But I do kind of feel, like it is what it is.
If you were.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, like I look back on that experience and like this was an older gentleman, my bishop, and he was raised, I think, here in Utah and in Bountiful, and I can't fault him for, doing what he felt was right. So,
yeah.
And I can also say I didn't enjoy that, and it was time for me to go.
It had real effects on you. Yeah. We should do an episode on like priesthood leader interactions. Because I feel like everyone has a story, not just for the sake of like griping, but like, what do you do? What do we do about that?
Understanding both perspectives,
Yeah.
coming at it from the priesthood leader who feels like he might have that stewardship that would affect his standing before God, right?
Yeah,
100%.
It's like,
yeah, and they're
that's heavy too.
They're put in really difficult. Yeah, we'll have to do.
That'd be a good episode.
Yeah, because we could go on
think
and
so
on.
too.
Yeah,
For sure.
for sure.
Good stories too. I've got good experiences with priesthood leaders and so forth. So
Yeah.
it's that roulette, I guess, is the thing we talk about, right?
Yeah.
You never know who you're gonna get and so forth. But anyway, we cut you off now and think about it. There was something.
No worries, we can come back to it. That's
You were like,
it's
if you
bigger
have any
than the
other
time
thoughts
that we
about
have.
one
and
sentence,
then-
Yeah.
and
That was
then
just
we're
one sentence.
10 minutes later, but
yeah, it had to do with mixed faith marriages. So that's a big one. That's a big topic.
yeah. So mixed faith marriage, I think that would be
Yeah,
a great
so-
topic for like another day. But if
Okay.
you do want to kind of introduce something that we
I
can go
wanted
off
to
of.
use that as a jumping off point for jumping back into bridge building generally. So the comment that was made, the Instagram comment about that they're in a mixed faith marriage, we've actually talked about this, I think, in the past, but I believe it was Gandhi said, there are as many religions in the world as there are individuals, something to that effect. And I think that is so true. And if we can acknowledge that, like all of us are in mixed faith marriages, all three of us, even though my wife and I both attend the LDS church actively every week, multiple times a week with the different activities and whatnot. So we're both very involved there. But when we get down to the micro details of our beliefs, we have very differing beliefs about very many things, and that's okay. And I think for a while, for me, it was like, well, that's not okay. We have to be on the same page, or one or the other of us is disrupting our eternal family, were the feelings that were coming up at that point. But I just wanted to maybe share visually. I'm not going to share the details here, but on one side, so my wife and I, we've gone through and identified different values, and I want to distinguish those from beliefs. And I've got primary, secondary, tertiary values. My wife has primary, secondary, tertiary values. And in the middle, we have our values, like where the crossover is, kind of like the Venn diagram that we talked about. But when we beliefs are so like detailed that we're always going to differ in something with whoever we talk to. And so I think this principle applies not just within a marriage, but with everybody. When we're trying to build a bridge, it's like if we can identify shared values, we can build from there a lot easier than, okay, well, do you believe this? Do you believe this? No, yes. There's just, so for example, family, both of us value family, gratitude, mutual respect, travel. Like, we both love to travel. We love the experiences that come through that and the gain perspective there. But they might fall differently on our individual values sides, or we put it in a different way, different words to get to the heart of what we really value. But trying to find that value and where it's shared, I have found is meaningful for me to help work through some of those big feelings of, we are so different, how can we ever reconcile? We're so different on these things that we have to make a decision together on. But if we can find that shared value, then it's like, okay, no, we are close. We do love each other. And again, beyond just husband and wife or spouses, but with family members, it's like, yeah, we differ in so many ways with our beliefs, but we share the value of community involvement, for example. How can we be involved together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How can we collaborate in ways that we're both okay with, that neither has to compromise our beliefs because we mutually are building on our shared value? Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to share, kind of, that jumping off point from a mixed faith marriage. Like, we all are in those, but we can find that similarity, a common ground, exactly.
I think it's like, we all have differences of beliefs with everyone that we interact with. And often, like, you can have very, very big differences with people you're really close to, like even people that you're married to. And I realize that there are some people in my life that, like, it is comfortable to disagree about a lot of things, and it's comfortable to disagree about big things. Like, I have this good friend that, like, we always just, like, laugh at the fact that, like, our opinions, like, we're just opposite. Like, we're really good friends, but, like, we just, like, never seem to match up, right? Or there's, like, a certain point of, like, church history that, like, my husband and I, like, disagree on, and, like, at least, like, once a week it, like, comes up and we, like, bicker about, like, whether or not, like, this particular label fits this particular person at this particular point in time. And, like, I don't feel threatened at all. Like, it's not uncomfortable for me to have that, like, disagreement with my husband because for, like, whatever reason that I'm having a hard time, like, verbalizing or articulating right now, there's just, like, a feeling of safety. Like, our relationship isn't threatened. Like, our sense of, like, identity to each other isn't threatened. I think it's because, like, we have enough in common or whatever. I'm not just talking about him, but, like, other people that I have this relationship as well, that, like, just the foundation is solid, you know? So those, you know, like, you have friends that you can, like, bicker with, like, so much, or, like, just, like, really go at each other, but you're, like, comfortable doing that. You feel safe doing that because, like, that foundation is there and that foundation is good. And so, like, just, like, can we find a way to, like, maybe not get on those terms with everybody? That's, like, a little bit of a lofty goal, but, like, is there a way to get onto those terms with a few more people where we are still comfortable in our relationships while the disagreements are coexisting?
Yeah. I think this is a great topic. I want to come back to it because we don't have enough time today. And I would think it would be helpful to have, like, potentially we can reach out to this person who shared this, other listeners, if they're in a mixed faith marriage and comfortable coming on, like, having both spouses on. I think that'd be really insightful to just kind of, like, see how they make it work. You know, that's, like, probably the most active bridge building in the most Latter-day bridge builder activity that's going on right now is those in mixed faith marriages and how they make that, raising kids every Sunday, right? Like, what's going on and what, I mean, it's going to look different for every couple, right? But it would be cool to see, like, a real life example of that. So please send us an email if you're interested.
Yes.
Cool.
I have a little bit of a thought,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Sure.
I just want to mention really quick the idea of spiritual bypassing.
Define that, please.
Yeah, are you familiar with the term?
Not well enough to know what you're saying.
Okay,
So no.
this
I'll
is
say no.
something I had like thrown this into the show notes, and then one of our Instagram followers responded with this phrase "spiritual bypassing" in all caps, as you know, this being like one of the reasons why bridge building is hard. The definition that I gave to it, or the description that I gave to it, is resorting to general, all-encompassing positive ideas to divert attention and resources away from acute needs. And so it's like if, you know, like if someone is on this, like someone clearly on the street needs help, and I'm like, hey, we should go help that person. And you guys say to me, Juliet, we should help everybody, right? Like we should help everybody. Like that is a true statement that's difficult to argue with. But like in the moment, that's diverting attention, resources away from the person with the acute need.
Sure.
And in this context, spiritual bypassing can look like God will work it all out in the end, you know, or like, let's all just get along, you know, just be nice.
Yeah.
Sometimes is a form of spiritual bypassing. And the reason that I bring this up is just to say that like our goal here isn't spiritual bypassing. Like our goal here isn't platitudes or to just tell everyone to be nice or get along or that it will all work out or, you know, just that everyone needs to be on their best behavior and that'll fix it or that, you know, or that you should like ignore the real and hard experiences that you've had for the sake of things being easy in your relationships, right? Or looking easy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like we just don't want, well, I'll speak for myself. I don't want people to feel like that's our message. Like some of like these topics, a lot of it feels icky, like feels uncomfortable. You know, it can feel like you're trying to challenge somebody, or it can feel like it looks like you're trying to challenge somebody, like even when you're not like doing that at all. And so if you're a person that comes to watch this with hurt, that hurt is probably real and valid. And just know that like, this is like, we probably can't heal your hurt. But we're also like not trying to ignore it, you know, or tell you that it's not real or that it just needs to go away.
No, that's good. This is probably going back to kind of what we've talked about on our shared Marco Polo of like, there's certain topics that are tough and I feel one way about them. And I think this is a good place for us to like, cause I agree with what you're saying here is it's easy to just say, well, let's just bury the hatchet, you know?
Yeah,
and
just
like,
all get along.
Who cares?
Just be
Like,
nice.
Yeah, just be nice. And I don't know. It's just always that fine line of things. But in general, I do agree with that. And maybe that's something I was kind of gravitating towards. So thank you for being a co-host to help me realize stuff like this. And thanks, Ashton, for being here as well. Like, I really enjoyed today's conversation. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
I don't know about you guys listening.
Yeah.
Hopefully they did.
Hopefully.
But honestly, this is probably to date my favorite episode that we've recorded.
Oh, awesome.
So
Up and up.
I am excited to post it, to get working with you both and move forward with this thing and have this project. And I'm grateful for everybody who's listening. Grateful for just life in general, right?
We're grateful for you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Cool. Well, please remember to like, subscribe, donate to the podcast if you can. We're still also looking for like a sponsor. Like if you're a local business and you want some, you know,
We'll shout you out.
we'll shout you out
Yeah.
and help support the production of this thing. We're grateful for Utah Podcast Studio for hosting this. It's a great set. Check them out. And yeah, as far as like, we'll talk about frequency and stuff. So follow us on our Instagram. That's probably where we're the most active and posting on our stories about announcements and so forth. I think that's the best way to kind of get us in the interim, as well as sending us an email, ldsbridgebuilders@gmail.com. Any last words?
Don't think so. You summed it up great.
Cool. All right.
We make an end of our speaking.
I make an end of my speaking.
Amen.
Cut.